now. Just breathe. I've got you. It's gonna be all right.
The old marshal had his hands locked around the young woman's thigh, holding her down as she begged him not to touch her. "I beg you, don't do it." The heat inside the abandoned warehouse pressed down like a weight.
Stop it, you're hurting
Dust
me.
floated in narrow
Please
beams
let
of
go.
sunlight cutting through the metal walls. Flies circled the blood on her leg. Silas Thorne did not look at her face. He looked only at the injury. Her hip was out of place. Badly. "If I don't fix it now," he said quietly, "you won't walk again." She shook her head, tears sliding into her hair. "Please, I'd rather not walk." Silas tightened his grip. He had done this before, just not in a place like this. Outside, Clara Vance froze with a damp cloth in her hands. She had been wiping the counter along the window when she heard the voice. Not shouting, not quite screaming, something worse, pleading. Clara stepped closer to the warehouse door and looked inside. What she saw made her stomach drop. Silas Thorne, alone with a young woman on the ground, her coat pulled uneven, her leg pinned between his hands, his body leaning over hers. No one else around. No witness. No explanation. "Thorne," she said, her voice sharp enough to cut through the heat. "What are you doing to her?" He did not turn. "Fixing something that's broken. That ain't your place. It is if I'm the only one here who can do it." The girl tried to pull away. She could not. Her hands trembled against the concrete. Clara took a step inside. Every instinct told her to drag him off the girl. Every story she had ever heard about Silas Thorne rose up at once. None of them ended kindly. "Let her go," Clara said. Silas finally spoke again, lower this time. "Hold her shoulders." Clara did not move. The girl looked at her, eyes wide, desperate, not just in pain, in fear of what might come next. Clara saw it then. The fear was real. Then, from somewhere beyond the warehouse, came the distant sound of engines approaching fast over gravel. Silas heard it. He paused for half a second. That was all. "They're tracking her," he said. "Blood makes it easy." Clara's grip tightened on the doorframe. "Who is?" The girl tried to answer, but the words broke apart in her throat. Silas adjusted his hands, ready to force the bone back into place. "You left a trail," Silas said. "Didn't matter who was coming. If I don't do this now," he said, "she won't be able to run." Clara looked from the girl's terrified face to the man everyone in Deadwood had learned not to trust. And the sound of engines was getting closer. If she helped him, she might save the girl. If she was wrong, she might be helping the worst man in the district finish something no one would be able to undo. So what was Silas Thorne really about to do to her? And why did he look like a man who had already made up his mind? Clara did not make her decision with words. She stepped forward, slow, careful, like someone walking into something she might regret. She knelt beside the girl and placed both hands on her shoulders. The girl was shaking hard now, not just from pain, but from something deeper. Something that had followed her all the way here. Silas gave a small nod. That was all the thanks she got. "Hold her steady," he said. Clara leaned her weight in. The girl tried to twist away. She could not. Her breath came in short, broken pulls. Her fingers dug into Clara's sleeve like she was holding on to the last safe thing she had. Silas adjusted his grip. For a moment, everything went quiet. The sound of engines kept getting closer outside, steady and unhurried. Then he moved. A sharp motion, fast and exact. The sound that came out of the girl was not a scream. It was lower, raw. It filled the warehouse and seemed to hang there even after she stopped. Then, silence again. Outside, the engines did not slow down. Clara felt the body under her hands go still. Not limp, just still. Silas let go slowly. "The joint's back in place," he said. The girl did not answer right away. She stared up at the ceiling, breathing hard like she was trying to come back from somewhere far away. Then, after a few seconds, she moved her foot. Just a little. It worked, but whatever was coming for her had not stopped. Clara noticed it before the girl did. "She can move it," Clara said, almost surprised at herself. The girl blinked, then looked at Silas, confused more than grateful. "You fixed it?" Silas shrugged once, like it did not matter. "It'll hold," he said. "If you push it too hard, it'll go again." Outside, the sound of engines was no longer distant. It was close now. Close enough to hear brakes hiss and metal shift. The girl's face changed. That was the moment Clara understood. This was not just about an injury. "Who's coming for you?" Clara asked. The girl swallowed. Her voice dropped low. "Men with badges." Clara frowned. "Lawmen?" The girl shook her head. "Not the kind that follow the law." Silas stood up slowly. His knees cracked as he rose, like a man who had spent too many years carrying weight. He looked toward the open side of the warehouse. Dust was already lifting on the road. Not one vehicle more than that. "They have found you quick," he said. Clara felt a cold weight settle in her chest. "If they're lawmen," she said, "why are you worried?" Silas rested his hand near his side, not on his gun. "Not yet. Because I know one of them," he said. Clara turned toward him. "Name?" Silas did not look at her. "Kane." The girl's fingers tightened around Clara's sleeve again. The vehicles stopped just outside the warehouse. No one spoke. That was worse than shouting. Not rushed, not loud, like the men driving them already knew they had time. Dust drifted past the doorway in slow waves. Clara could see shadows moving through it, shapes of men sliding out of their seats, calm and unhurried. That was the part that didn't feel right. Men who followed the law did not move like that. Silas stood still, his weight settled, his breathing even. He did not reach for his gun. Not yet. The girl pushed herself up on her elbows, testing her leg again. It held, barely. Pain crossed her face, but she forced it down. "You said you knew him," Clara whispered. "Kane." Silas nodded once. "Long time ago. That don't tell me much." "It's enough." Clara studied him then. Really studied him. The way he stood, the way he watched the light instead of the men, the way nothing in him seemed surprised. "You weren't always a marshal, were you?" she said. Silas did not answer. Outside, a voice finally came through. Thorne. Calm. Familiar. Almost friendly. Clara felt it in her chest before she understood why. "Been a while," the voice continued. Silas took one slow breath. "Not long enough," he said under it. The girl looked between them, confused, afraid. "You know him too well," she said. Silas glanced at her, just for a moment. "Better than I should." That was not the answer of a stranger. Clara had heard the name Thorne before. Not in stories told out loud, but in the kind people lowered their voice for. A man who could track across barren land without losing a trail. A man who did not miss when it mattered. She had never believed those stories fully. Men liked to exaggerate things that scared them. But standing there now, watching him without a hint of panic, she started to wonder if those stories had been smaller than the truth. That was when Clara understood something else. This wasn't chance. This wasn't just a man helping a stranger. This was something unfinished finding its way back. If you're listening with a cup of coffee nearby, stay with me here for a minute. I'd like to know where you're listening from and what you would do in a moment like this. And if stories like this mean something to you, subscribe and come back for the next one. Because a man's character often shows itself in the hardest quiet moments. Footsteps creaked on dry ground just outside. One of the men laughed softly, not nervous, not unsure. Confident. Clara leaned closer to Silas without meaning to. "If he's law," she said, "why not let him take her?" Silas kept his eyes forward. "Because he ain't here to take her anywhere," he said. The girl's voice dropped to almost nothing. "He was supposed to protect my father," she said. "But he didn't." Clara's throat tightened. Outside, the same calm voice again. "You always did like picking the wrong side, Thorne." Silas closed his eyes for a brief second. Not fear, something closer to memory. When he opened them again, they were steady, old, tired. But clear. The kind of eyes that had already made this choice once before. Only this time, there would be no walking away from it. No one rushed in. That was the first thing that made it worse. The men outside took their time, boots pressing slowly into the dirt, gear shifting with each step. They were not worried about resistance. They were not expecting trouble. That meant they believed they already controlled the outcome. Clara felt it settle into her bones. Silas did not move from where he stood. His hands hung at his sides, loose but not relaxed. His eyes stayed fixed on the open side of the warehouse. The girl reached for his sleeve again. "I beg you, don't do it," she whispered. This time it was different. Not fear of pain. Fear of what he might become. Silas looked down at her hand for a brief second. Just long enough to feel it. Then he gently pulled his sleeve free. "I ain't doing this for me," he said. He said it like a man reminding himself, not them. There was a time when a moment like this would have ended differently. Faster. Colder. Without questions. Clara could see it in the way he stood. Not eager, not afraid. Just holding something back that had been let loose before. Outside, a shadow crossed the doorway. Then another. Victor Kane stepped into view without stepping inside. He stayed just beyond the light where the sun hit the dust and turned it gold around him. Older than Silas by a few years. Cleaner. Straighter. The kind of man who looked like he belonged in charge. That was the problem. His eyes moved once across the warehouse, slow and certain. They stopped on Silas. A faint smile touched his face. "Still breathing?" Kane said. Silas gave a small nod. Barely. Kane glanced toward the girl, then back. You always did pick the losing side. Silas did not answer. Kane shifted his weight slightly and gestured with 2 fingers. One of his men stepped forward, moving past him into the warehouse. Clara felt her chest tighten. That's far enough, she said, but her voice did not carry the authority she wanted. The man ignored her. He walked straight toward the girl. The girl tried to pull herself back, but her leg failed her. Pain hit, and she froze. Easy now, the man said, reaching down. Silas had not moved yet. Not a step. Not a word. Clara turned toward him, panic rising. Thorne, she said under her breath. Nothing. The man grabbed the girl by the arm and pulled. She cried out sharp and sudden. Her leg twisted under her, and the fresh set joint shifted just enough to send a wave of pain through her whole body. That sound changed something. Not for the first time. Not in the room. In Silas. His shoulders lifted once, slow. His right hand moved. Not fast. Not dramatic. Just certain. Kane saw it. For a second, neither man moved. It was not hesitation. It was recognition. The kind that comes when 2 men remember exactly who the other one is. His smile faded. Don't, Kane said. But it was already too late, because Silas Thorne had just decided he was not going to let them take her. And the moment his hand reached his gun, everything in that warehouse was about to change. The shot came fast. Not loud, not wild. Just 2 clean sounds that cut through the heat and settled everything for a moment. The man pulling the girl dropped, his grip gone. Kane went down next, hit low, not finished, just stopped. Then silence. No one in that warehouse would forget that sound. The kind that makes a man hear his own breath. Silas stood there with a gun in his hand, but there was no anger in him. Only a line that had been crossed and a weight that came with it. The weight of it sat heavy in his hand. Not the gun. The choice. He had crossed that line before in his life. Back then, it had been easier. Back then, it had felt like the only way. Now it felt different. Kane looked up, pain in his eyes, but something colder behind it. Recognition. You should have finished it back then, he said quietly. Silas shook his head. That ain't who I am anymore. Kane gave a small smile, like a man who knew something the other one did not. That don't mean it's over. Silas did not answer. He tied them up, steady and controlled. Not revenge, not punishment, just enough to stop what was in front of him. Clara drove for the sheriff in the next town before the sun went down. But not everything. By sunset, the law from the next town had come and gone. A few days later, the ranch sat under the same wide sky. The wind moved across the plains like it always had. Nothing out there looked different, but sometimes the danger you need to worry about is the kind you cannot see coming yet. The girl rested on the porch, her leg healing slow but sure. She watched the horizon more than she watched the ground now. Clara came by less, but when she did, she stayed a little longer. Silas poured coffee into 2 cups again. He did not ask her to stay. She did not say she would leave. And somehow, that was enough for now. I will tell you this from my own point of view. I have seen men try to outrun who they used to be, and it never works the way they hope. And I believe with all my heart that God does not waste a man's past. He uses it to shape the moment where that man finally chooses what is right. So let me ask you something. If the past came riding back into your life tomorrow, would you stand your ground? Or would you walk away again? Because doing the right thing once does not mean the test is over. If this story stayed with you, take a moment to like and subscribe and share this video. Not just for more stories, but as a reminder that dignity is not something you prove once. It is something you live again and again. Even when it gets hard, Silas Thorne sat down with his coffee. The town was quiet. Too quiet for a man who knew how trouble moved. Because trouble like that did not end. It waited. It circled back. It remembered. But out past the horizon, something was still moving. And men like Kane never rode alone for long. And sooner or later, it would find its way back to him.